I couldn't tell you when I've heard a message like that preached.
Me neither, man. And even there were some times at Sagu where I'd hear people sort of poke at it a little bit here and there,
Yeah, yeah.
but no one ever really came out and said it. Oh my gosh. That just reminds me. Another thing that he said, I'll just talk about it. He basically calls it the conspiracy of silence inside the
Dude.
church, where people are so afraid to question God. They're so afraid to ask about difficult questions or voice things that they're really going through because they're afraid of being looked at strange or looked down upon or seen as not good enough Christians or
Yeah,
not confident or faithful enough. And they don't question these things even though they feel them because it takes courage. It's really difficult. It makes you feel like an outsider at times. It makes you feel like there's something might even be wrong with you at times too. And
yeah,
so it's just easier to pretend like everything's okay, everything's going all right, putting your head in the sand essentially. And it creates what he calls a conspiracy of silence where everyone is just pretending like it's okay,
yeah,
that it's okay and that they're okay, when in fact, they may even question the existence of God, but they're an elder at the church. So that they're at this point where they feel they're so far deep in the system that they begin to live this dual life. And that's what leads to hidden sin. That
yeah,
is the seed that leads to hidden sin because they never feel safe enough to express themselves, express their doubts, express their attractions or frustrations or the inconsistencies of the church or questions about the Bible. They never feel like they can truly question that. And so it becomes this unhealthy thing where darkness is never brought out into the light and can never be dealt with.
yeah,
Before you know it, they're freaking having an affair with their secretary. It's like, how did they get to this point? You don't just fall into bed with your secretary. Like, it can lead to that. I'm not saying it always does, but it can lead to hidden sin. It's a way that Satan takes an inch and makes it a mile.
yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to put this together. But we kind of touched on it on Thursday night when we were talking outside of Willie's. um, there seems to be I don't know what you would call it, but there's this thing where there's this thing that happens where you go to this big spiritual, revival, like a retreat or a youth camp or women's,
Conference.
yeah, conference, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is. And then you have these big breakthrough moments or these big spiritual highs. Uh, and it feels amazing. You feel like you're on cloud nine and that you've never been like closer to God. You've never felt this amount of freedom before in terms of your faith and just being free from sin, all everything that comes with those big spiritual moments, right? And then like three, sometimes even less than this. I was gonna say like 2 3 months later, but sometimes even maybe like 2 3 weeks later, it's like you find yourself in the same exact spot that you were in before that occasion,
And you feel even more hopeless now.
and you feel even more hopeless. And then you go to church, you're continuing to go to church, and you might even come to the point where it's like, dang, well, I guess maybe I just didn't believe enough.
Mm.
Maybe I just really didn't have, maybe I still don't have enough faith. Because if I did, I wouldn't be having these problems right now. So then it's like, then you become questioning your faith even more. And it's just this constant cycle. It's then it becomes this conspiracy of silence where it's like, dude, didn't you? I mean, you're the guy that went up on stage on testimony night and you freaking said how you were delivered from pornography, and like 3 weeks later, you're that same guy. But you don't want to tell anybody that.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to make God look bad.
Yeah. And you don't want to see less righteous. You don't want to you don't want to seem less righteous. You don't want to seem I don't know.
Not good enough.
Yeah, or like a fake.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I guess he really wasn't delivered.
I'm laughing because of the ridiculousness of it all. That like, I mean, just recently had this breakthrough, and it has begun to transform my daily life, Zach.
Yeah.
Of realizing that I don't have to wait until Sunday to be at peace or feel restored or be with God. And I've talked to several other young adults who have described that exact same thing you just mentioned, where what the issue becomes is it implies that those spiritual highs are peak Christianity.
Yes.
And that's how it's supposed to be all the time. And if you're not always crying during worship, and if you're not always getting the chills, then you're just not doing it good enough.
Yeah.
You're just not in the right atmosphere. You're just not pursuing, you're not digging in hard enough.
Yeah.
And the reason that hurts us so much is because it's not true.